Ooh.
So returning to Procter and Gamble now for a moment.
Mhm.
So we've sort of described the model. Now I'd like to hear about your experience, Bruce, of really, taking up the other world charts from Joe Matthews and
Mhm.
beginning to use them, I guess, in your appreciative inquiry to try to understand what was going on with the Procter and Gamble team and how you decided to do that, what you saw.
Mm. I think part of it was it had to, let me see. There is a linearity to the world, so I wouldn't say that there's a lack of, or there isn't linearity. It's an unruly um, process. And part of it is just where you pop into the cycle, where you become aware of it, where you get tossed out. Um, Varies, and part of it is because of um, the turbulence of the whole process. How do you it's kind of like, how do you recognize innovation when you see one? And because you're kind of going through this whole process and crunching, and you really didn't see it. It was like I was looking for the right. We went up to Big Bear. Went up to Mammoth. We're on our way up on a highway that I hadn't used before, and one of the things I realized is that as we were going up there, is that at one point we realized that we hadn't taken the right route. We're looking to try and go up this new route, and there's an exit that I had to find 395 when it went up, and I was looking, and I didn't see the change of the road, and then eventually I realized that I was not on 395, and we were still on Interstate 5 headed towards Las Vegas, and that wasn't the direction we wanted to go on. So somehow our route should have taken a turn in the road, but I hadn't recognized and hadn't made the change. But at some point, I kind of woke up and it dawned on me that something wasn't working the same way. And then a lot of times I have to scramble back and figure out what was going on and where are we and what's going and how do we get back onto this route, because there's still a desire for some kind of linearity out of it, because that's kind of our cybernetic wiring makes us work that way. We have a goal, direction. We have, we really do want to at some point get to Peoria, you see, we want to get to what was that? This is, our journey to the east does have some kind of continuity, but it's broken up with all this discontinuity that happens. The realizations. We thought we were on the road up to Mammoth, and before you realize it, you're on your way to Las Vegas, and you have to figure out, okay, how do I get back onto the road? And so you can ask some people about where are we going. It was kind of interesting. We went to a fast food restaurant and a Subway, and asked the gal who was behind the counter. She says, well, I'm not from around here, so I don't really know where that road is. Others had different opinions about how to get back on the right highway. But it's interesting about that whole process of awakening, and it's those kinds of being on the wrong road types of innovations that really kind of is where the innovation occurs. It doesn't really occur by picking out a plan and following the plan and doing it. It was actually by being aware and alive in the midst of it's like John Lennon said, life is what happens while you're busy making other plans. And one of our in the other world charts, I thought would be a helpful means of recognizing the state of being in the sense of surprise, maybe revolt, indignation that pops up because life doesn't work the way you want it to. It's unruly. And a lot of the process and my challenge was just to be able to recognize that change, so at least I didn't further screw it up by wanting it to be one way when it clearly wasn't.
So just to put too fine of a point on it, in the course of your appreciative inquiry of their work, you found some of Joe Matthews' other world work useful reference points for states of being that, and recognizing what you were involved with, something like that.
Right. Just so you could recognize it, because is the correspondence between your internal world and the external world that was the difficulty. We just went through a process of strategic planning at my university, and it was amazing. It was like a 3-year program, a completely naive program. When I was earlier on as a city planner, is one of the things we realized that didn't work. I mean, the result of a planning process isn't a plan, it is actually a process. And you get the right people together to talk about the right things at the right time. And but here he had this amazingly naive process. It was, well, you create a plan and then you work the plan. He says, well, not really. The difficulty is that, if you have this long sequential process and you force people to go through it, yeah, you'll get done with it. But oftentimes you're not going to have any real realizations, or very few, in the whole process, which is kind of what happened. We ended up with a whole plan that some of it's important. It misses a lot of the real importance in the situation because it's strictly adhering to their linear process. And so it's kind of recognizing how can we operate in this live world.
So I think that's a great phrase that you have there. How can we operate in this live world? So you're using the example of the university planning process. It's the same question there as it is at Procter & Gamble.
Mm-hmm.
Say it again. How can we?
Well, it's how can we live in a live world, because it's an unruly world. It's not. It has. We only vaguely understand how it works, and this is true. After I just went through a process of prostate cancer and going through surgery and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, some of it's predictable. You can kind of get at it, but a lot of it is not very predictable. And it's the anomalies that sometimes end up being both blessings and curses that come up. It's the unpredictability that is the tricky one to kind of finding out.
So could you give the prostate thing? I can definitely get what some anomalies might be there, some unpredictabilities. Could you give an example in the Procter & Gamble case of some anomalies that you crashed into that you found a helpful way to understand that state of being using Matthews' other world charts?
Well, I think it's one of the things I realized with it. Part of it was just to kind of get the correspondence. That was one of the things, that there was a correspondence to that. So it was the internal. If I could get I guess that was the first thing I thought was very helpful with it, is that it was describing what it feels like at these various points on the external world. So the external world was something like recognizing, like we had these meetings and what was going on, and I was always thrown off by these series of meetings, and they occurred all over the place. So as deliberations I was looking at, one of the things we had were two types of product review meetings were incredibly important, and they happened all the time and periodically. in product review